Hello everyone, Emma Power here, and welcome back to a new sad video. This is going to be the last video that I plan to record on Pokemon TCGO. Now, it won't necessarily be the last video, so a bit of a mislead there, but basically the last video I'll probably go and look at some theme decks somewhere down the line. I won't release those videos until we're at least a wee bit into the Scarlet and Violet era, so, and maybe do some expanded videos as well, actually, if I don't do theme decks. So just, people can look back and see how things are different, or, can look back and reminisce on the good times, I guess. But in this video, I kind of just wanted to talk about Pokemon TCG Online, some of my biggest gripes with this game, but also like just good memories, really, because obviously it's pretty sad to see it go. There is no official shutdown date as of recording this video. I honestly thought they would announce one with the release of Scarlet and Violet. They did not. So we're kind of left in this limbo where most people have migrated over to live because that's the only way to play the new Scarlet and Violet cards online and to test for future events. But Pokemon TCG Online is basically left with this eternal version of Standard. So as long as you don't mind facing a million Lugias, then basically the versus ladder is just going to be populated with everything that is currently in our standard format. And then, of course, if you've been playing live, you'll know what post-rotation looks like. So two very different games with two very different formats. And I guess that brings us to the first thing I really want to talk about, which is the versus ladder. So overall, I would say the versus ladder has been a pretty enjoyable thing to progress through. I like the fact that you can essentially get two copies, like a V or a V star, or two copies of a GX Pokemon through the 2-star gameplay. Not 2-star gameplay, like the 2-star ranking is what I should say. But one thing I will say about this compared to the Battle Pass on Live is there's no slightly confusing shenanigans for any players who aren't used to it, maybe. It's literally just you progress through this part, you progress through this bar, and then you progress through this bar. Now, I'll admit, I don't always get to this part in the ladder because obviously, like, as you grow older, you get less time to do stuff, and I can't really devote my life to this game. But however, I was able to complete the third ladder several times during lockdown, so I guess there's a plus side there. Oh, I don't know, I already had a copy of Charon's Care actually, but yeah. So this is the ladder. There's also like some cool ones such as this rare hollow chest, which admittedly isn't that great. You're not really guaranteed to get something you want, but it's still sizable enough. You also get a lot of tokens. You also get stuff like the event tickets, which we'll talk about in a minute. You also get chests as well as booster packs. So overall, the ladder itself is okay. Also, the reward system, like for those of you who remember, Pokemon TCGO used to use this spin the wheel thing. So there was actually a chance you would land on a reward you already had, which was pretty bad. Now, don't get me wrong, the spin the wheel thing, it visually looks really cool, and I prefer it to this like ranking thing. But the spin the wheel was a bit broken. I didn't like it that much. And this one definitely feels a lot better. It encourages players to play at least 12 games or at least get 12 wins in a day. And then if you get any more than that, the only rewards you're really getting off this is 5 gold. Now, I will say that I think these rewards aren't necessarily as good as the ones you get on live because live rewards you for maybe playing 1, 2, or 3 games. And even if you don't win those games, sometimes that's enough to complete the daily challenges and unlock more credits and crystals. So, and that's also like one of the best ways of getting crystals on live, funnily enough. It's like one of the easiest ways of getting 50 or 60 crystals a day. So yeah, I would say that live kind of wins this sort of comparison. I don't want the whole video to be a comparison to live. I just want to focus on TCGO really. But yeah, daily versus rewards could have been better, especially since you need a lot of tokens just to really do anything, especially as a free-to-play kind of guy. So I do want to talk about the format choice, which I think is pretty underrated. Now that we're leaving TCGO and seeing what live has to offer, I would definitely say that, I really wish I'd just spent more time with these different formats. Like standard is obviously like the biggest one for most players. I must admit I did most of my gameplay in expanded, like just progressing through the ladder because there's just more variety in expanded. Yeah, you'll occasionally run into a player who opens with a Lugia V. Next thing you know, they battle Compressor for a Wally and 2 Archops. They Versus Seeker for the Wally, and then they get Summoning Star turn 1 going second, which is of course extremely broken. But broken expanded decks aside, expanded can be really fun. There's obviously like a lot of rogue stuff. I've lost to a lot of really random decks because I just don't know what my opponent is going to do on their turn. It's just such a big card pool. There's this kind of element of what on earth is going to happen next, or what on earth is my opponent going to be able to do? And because you can't really prepare for every scenario, there's just a lot more chaos to it. And part of the fun of expanded is the chaos. So I do like expanded in that regard. I don't hate expanded. I just wish Pokemon would maybe put more attention into it and, revise the ban list, shall we say. But yeah, expanded, standard, what you'd expect. Then at the other end of the scales, we have legacy and theme. So I only have one deck in Legacy. It's called Leg for some reason. I guess short for Legacy. That wasn't too obvious. And look at this awful deck. Now, if you go on Legacy now, there is actually a good chance you'll be paired up against a robot, a bot, or maybe the occasional Legacy player. But realistically, Legacy is just kind of a not really a dead format, but it's certainly one that's it's hard to talk about Legacy because it has stood the test of time. There is clearly still people who really enjoy the format, but at the same time, this format is so hard to get into. I remember on my first account before I lost that account. Before I lost that one, I was making decent progress with creating a Legacy budget deck. But Legacy is just really expensive if you don't want to buy codes or shell out a ton of online packs to get cards. So it was pretty difficult. Plus, they introduced the whole thing where you could use updated card artworks and stuff, which, yeah, it's cool that I have like this full art version of Copycat, I should say. But I definitely don't think this art style, fits in with the classic look of Legacy with stuff like Life Herb, for instance. So there's a little bit of a gripe there, but that's obviously just a niche personal thing. And I, of course, brought that upon myself. So yeah, that's Legacy. I do kind of wish Pokemon TCG Live, and I'm talking about TCG Live again, but I kind of wish they would add maybe older formats, like the option to play with older formats. Obviously, there's so many to choose from that you couldn't add them all because there'd be such a large player base divided across so many different formats. That's obviously a problem. But what they could do is maybe select the most popular. They could do a vote and people could choose which one they wanted to add. Maybe a draft format like on MTG Arena. The draft format on MTG Arena is really cool. Basically, it's like an event that you pay, I think you pay credits or crystals or whatever the currency was in MTG Arena. So it would be event tickets if it was still on PTCGO, or was on PTCGO, I should say, correct terms. So how a draft tournament works is you get some staples, like some evolution Pokemon stuff, and then you just get a bunch of booster packs. You take one card from the booster pack, and then you just pass it along, and then you build a deck from that draft deck, basically. And there's no limit to what you put in your draft deck in terms of basic energy. So if you really get a good card, you could just play like 39 basic energy and one busted Pokemon. I think it's 40 card deck size for draft. Have to check that, but I would much rather they added something like draft as opposed to legacy, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, just because I think legacy it's a good idea, but I worry that it has its limitations, if that makes sense. I think legacy has limitations, and I think if they were going to add something like legacy to live, they would have to add stuff to the shop to help players like get interested or get into it, I should say. So yeah, legacy is a strange one, but there is like a lot of fun decks in legacy, so I can definitely see why people like it. So the next one is going to be a super niche format that basically only exists on TCG Online, so it's exclusive in that sense. I mean, I've heard of like challenge stores or Pokemon stores that do run theme deck tournaments and stuff for the kids because truthfully, it is a pretty easy format to play. It's also pretty fun. But basically, theme deck has its problems. It has its upsides, downsides. And one thing I will say about theme is despite one or two decks maybe being considerably more powerful than the rest, i.e. Roaring Storm and then the Charizard deck, Relentless Flames, what I will say about theme, is that a lot of players do like theme. The players that really do like this format do like it, and they like it for a reason. I think that's important. It shows that people are willing to overcome the fact that there's maybe one or two decks that kind of trump the rest, there is a decent chance that you can make it back. Like if I just look at this Torrential Cannon theme deck, I don't think this deck is great, but it has a decent Charizard matchup. So it's kind of cool in that sense. And of course, it does have some cool merits to it. There's a Farfetch that I think is really good. The Blastoise is fun to use. There's even a Golduck that has this like sniping move and stuff potentially. So there's Pidgeotto for the Airmail. I just like theme deck format, honestly. I kind of wish theme would be added to live in a sense, and maybe they could have, continued putting theme decks in the TCG Live shop for, a couple of hundred crystals each or something. They could have worked something out. It wasn't necessary, I think, to write these off. And at the very least, they could have just imported all your current theme decks over to live. And, if you want to cash them in for credits, then that's fine. But if you want to keep them around and play in that format, then, that could have been an option for players. So, yeah, I'm going to miss theme in that sense. But I guess that's all the format stuff. So I guess we can have a look at events. I do want to get around to Trainer Challenge and trading at the very least. So I don't know how long this video is going to be, by the way. So I'm just kind of winging it. So events were cool, to be honest. I do like the event system. It was a bit of a pain initially to grind for tickets when I wasn't like a very good player, didn't have very good decks. But as you know, as you get better, as you play more and more of this game, you can get more and more tickets pretty quickly. And the standard event system, 3 rounds, best of one, basically. You win all 3 rounds, you get the most rewards. You get 3 of the latest set, 3 of random boosters, and then 400 tokens, which is, it's sizable. It is a lot. I would say my biggest gripe with this is that if you finish last, 50 tokens and 1 uncommon chest is really brutal, considering you've just spent 8 tickets on it. And 8 tickets, I've just said it's easy to grind for tickets, but realistically, the average player and myself have struggled to master 8 tickets repeatedly over and over again. So I would say it is pretty brutal of a system. I'd say at least a couple of uncommon chests, but that's my only gripe with it. Theme format is cheaper because the rewards are slightly less. And this is something that I kind of wish Live had implemented. Like, I really wish they just copy and pasted this whole thing over. Maybe they could have charged coins to enter it as well, because coins can currently only be used for cosmetics. But, events were fun. And honestly, part of me wishes they'd added higher tier events, like 10 ticket or 12 ticket even. And then maybe there was more rounds with higher rewards. I think that could have been cool to see. Something like a League Cup or a League Challenge style event where you get a booster pack for entering and then you get a few more every time you win a new game. There's just stuff like that. And, that's even a chance to implement, league promos officially on like online, because currently you have to get a promo card or something. There's just a lot of things they could do with events, and it would be really cool to see that in a future game. But overall for this thing, I would definitely say I've enjoyed events. I think it's a really cool idea. So definitely a thumbs up for me. Next, we're going to look at this is probably like a bit of a controversial one, because I know I'm clouded in nostalgia for these random cartoon characters. But I do agree that this was a bit of a grind to get through. For new players, I think it's decent for teaching people how to play the game. It also teaches you some key things with like deck building. I think Trainer Challenge was one of the things that really put me off including a lot of energy in my deck. I started to migrate towards using 12 energy or less kind of type deals. So, Zach was awful deck, and then they slowly do get a bit better. And then, of course, there's 3 different levels of difficulty. So you can challenge them with theme decks. You can also upgrade the starter decks that they gave you, like Crushing Current. But unfortunately, these decks were terrible, and sometimes it was pretty easy to lose to these characters. But, if you did 4 victories against these guys with 4 different theme decks, then you actually get 1 booster pack. And there's just nothing like this on TCG Live. I hate going back to TCG Live continuously, but there's no real like reward tutorial system against these NPC characters. It's kind of like the invented TCGO lore, basically. Like, they have all these unique characters that are not from the anime or anything. And to me, that's kind of cool. It's nice to see that. Also, something I forgot to mention is that if you win 12 games with a theme deck against 12 different things. So it seems here that I haven't defeated Ella with Crushing Current. So if I was to defeat Ella with Crushing Current, I could have improved a point there. So if you do 12 different games across like the different leagues, so you can't face Ella 12 times with Stormcrawler, you'd have to face Ella 3 different times minimum, and then a bunch of other players. You do actually get a pack for just playing 12 games and winning them. So kind of cool. It is a bit of a grind, unfortunately, but I do think it's a fun little format, especially for younger people who don't necessarily want to play against other people online all the time. So I don't hate this idea. I do wish the starter decks could have been better. They could have been a lot better, to say the least. And I'm glad that TCG Live does give you better decks, but ultimately, I don't hate these. I kind of like Trainer Challenge. Think it's kind of sweet. It's fun or whatever. But yeah, I guess we have the tutorial as well down there. But we can probably move on to Collection. And you won't believe this, if you haven't played TCG Live or you know nothing about TCG Live, then this might come as a shock to you, but there is no way to view your full collection on TCG Live without editing a deck. Can you believe that? Whereas on TCGO, and this feature I'm going to miss so much. It's so easy. It's so easy to view. The UI is great. It's very quick to load typically. You can view everything that you own. You can also easily use the filters. It's not like Live where you're scrolling forever. It's all here, nice and neat for you. It's just so much better than other stuff. So I'm just happy that the collection is the way it is on TCGO. I think it's very strong. Same goes for Deck Manager, although I would say the Deck Manager from TCGO, TCG Live is basically the same thing. I mean, it's more or less the exact same layout almost in a way, except TCG Live does show the deck, so you don't have to like click on it, I guess, to view it. But I would say that I do prefer the ability to just, click on these options rather than just click on a new deck and then open it up and stuff. So yeah, Deck Manager, very solid. Another thing I just want to touch upon is trading on TCGO. This, to me, was honestly one of the weaker aspects of this game. Now, I know that that's definitely going to be a bit of a hot take because some people just really like to trade, and I don't blame you. Like, trading is by all means very fun, but trading online came with a lot of problems, mainly because a lot of players typically don't know the values of cards. So you might have players who try and oversell cards, or players who don't understand the value of what they're trading for and end up looking like they're trying to scam someone when they're just, they just don't know. That's not necessarily their fault, they just aren't aware. So I kind of wish TCGO had had a feature that maybe just suggested or, gave a rough guide as to what things were worth. I don't think there needed to be a whole tab dedicated to what the value of every single card was, but, a bit of a better indication as to if a trade was fair or not. Because, as the majority of us know, public trades are just not very fair. I mean, what is this trade? Okay, I wouldn't do that, even if Evolving Skies was a good pack to open, a good pack to trade off or whatever. For me, getting one Evolving Skies for trading off like a 1/1 line of a VMAX that is moderately playable is just weak, to be honest. There's also some like even more questionable ones, like what is this? Okay, that's clearly Evolving Skies is the stuff to get, I guess. But okay, which one's this? So we've got a Snorlax that sees play in loads of Lost Zone decks, for a Hooper that sees niche play in maybe Eternatus, and a random Suicune that never saw the light of day. So yeah, that should probably give you a good idea of like, oh my days. Right, right, that's enough of trades. Yeah, you can probably see that trading pretty bad. And then we can probably have a look at, actually, I actually want to backtrack a bit and go back to the deck manager a second, just because I would like to take a look at a feature that I think is probably the worst aspect of deck creation on TCGO. And I think it could be the reason as to why many starting players end up with, 20 energy, 20 Pokemon, 20 trainers. And that's Deck Wizard. Deck Wizard might be one of the worst applications designed for any online TCG, and that is no exaggeration. I do genuinely believe this card is terrible. This not card, I should say. It's an application, it's a device, a type in Arceus, so we can pick Arceus and then continue. And then I can't remember if it let me choose to or not, but I don't think it did. But basically, it just makes a deck from 2 Pokemon that you choose, but it gives you 20 traders, 20 energy, and 20 Pokemon. And not all the time the Pokemon and trainers make sense or match. So sometimes you'll get trainers that you literally cannot use in your deck. For instance, we actually got one here. Towers of Water says the retreat cost of each Rapid Strike Pokemon in play is 2 colors less. Spoiler alert, we don't play any Rapid Strike Pokemon, you stupid thing. So yeah, I'm not going to be saving this. Yes, discard. But yeah, you can probably see why. Now, obviously, players who have been around for a bit longer can, build their own decks or whatever. This was something fun I was testing out for a while. It ended up being a surprisingly good deck, I would say. Like 4 out of 7 on average is pretty decent. But you can obviously, like, that's another thing about TCGO is that you can create a lot of different decks for different formats as long as they're compatible with the online system. So I built a couple of GLC decks expecting to play in GLC events. Spoiler, I never did, but rip GLC, I guess, until they finally add it to expanded. But yeah, GLC needs to be a format on TCG Live. Please add it, Pokemon. So I believe this is just, that's just a profile. And then if we look at shop, this is probably like the last thing we need to take a look at really today. And yeah, the shop. Where to begin with a shop? Honestly, I think the shop could have done with a bigger update at some point in TCGO's lifespan. I do think the shop on Pokemon TCG Live is significantly better. Apart from the weird aspect that you can't buy cosmetics from the shop directly, you have to go into your deck manager to buy cosmetics. It's like this weird second hidden door kind of feature. But the shop on TCG Live is just so much better than whatever this is. I mean, 200 tokens from a pack, whatever, sure, but that's a lot, to be honest, for 10 cards that might not even be good. But yeah, I'll not be the bring all big old words. The decider of prices, we'll say. I'll close it there with the decider of prices. But you can buy a theme deck for 500 tokens. So, for example, if you really want to play a Garchomp Lucario themed deck, you can just purchase one. And because all the theme decks were roughly the same power level throughout their entire lifespan, and that includes the ones all the way up to Sword and Shield, you can purchase any theme deck, typically from Expanded or Standard, except maybe this Pikachu deck. Actually, I think my friend bought this in real life. I love the Generations art style, by the way. I'm not sure if my friend, yeah, this deck is pretty bad. Although I will say the Beedrill is very cool and would make for a fun expanded deck. But unfortunately, yeah, there is some theme decks that are pretty bad. Okay, fair enough. But, some theme decks were created more equal than others, it would seem. But yeah, there is some cool ones, like this Greninja deck. If you upgrade this with Greninja Breaks and remove some of the filler, it's essentially one of the best decks in Expanded, or at least it was at the time of, thinking about it. If we also scroll down far enough, we should actually see the first ever theme deck, or the first ever deck that I ever played, Burning Winds. So yeah, the fact that I can recite every Pokemon from this deck is also a bit scary, but yeah, this is the first theme deck I ever played. Just random bit of Ember Power lore, and probably why I like fire types so much and grass types, because yeah, this happened to be the first stage 2 I ever played. Fun little fact. But yeah, you can also like go as far back as Legacy and purchase theme decks. There were some ones that I meant to buy and then unfortunately never did. So I guess you could say a cool collection goal or something would have been to try and purchase all of the theme decks and get around to doing it. But yeah, honestly, the shop could have been worse, could have been better. I think the prices were a wee bit too harsh for what they were doing. Also, I just wish there'd been bundles as well. That would have been super cool. But yeah, that's about it for the shop. And then that's redeeming codes. So yeah, closing thoughts on TCGO. I mean, it's been such a ride, honestly. I'm gonna migrate shortly after making this video, FYI. But yeah, it's been such a crazy ride. If you have any positive experiences of TCGO, I'm sure you have a few. Do of course let me know if you're feeling it. But yeah, it's been Ember Power. It's the end of an era on Pokemon TCGO. I'm definitely sad to see it go. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. It's been Ember Power. Hope to see you next time in the TCG Live videos, whenever they may begin. So yeah, thank you for watching.